If you could send a text message to your 25-year-old self with 7 pieces of financial advice, what would it say? Now, I just turned 52 and I've been a financial advisor for over 25 years. And I made some financial mistakes early in my life that I wish I could have a redo on, knowing what I know now. The expensive car to impress people I didn't even like, the vacation I charged on credit card that took me 2 years to pay off, the hot stock tips that crashed 60% in 3 months. And yes, even a financial advisor will make a mistake with their own money before they gain some experience. I thought I was smarter just because I had my Series 7 and some designations, but I knew better and I'm wiser because of the mistakes I made earlier in my life. But knowing and doing are two completely different games. Today, I'm pulling back the curtain on the 7 biggest financial mistakes I made in my 20s and 30s, decisions that cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost wealth. But more importantly, I'm going to show you exactly how to avoid making the same mistakes that I did. In this episode, you're going to learn 3 wealth decision principles to remember to become smarter with money and an action plan to help you make better wealth decisions starting today. There's a lot of financial advice out there, and I heard it all when I first started in the business. They say save more or live below your means. But nobody talks about the psychological traps that make smart people do dumb things. So picture this, it's 1999, I'm 25 years old, and I just bought a brand new BMW 3 Series. Gunmetal gray, black leather interior. I felt like $1 million pulling it into the office parking lot. There was just one small problem. I was barely making $60,000 a year at that time, and my car payment was eating up nearly a third of my take home pay. But here's kind of what really stings. That extra $200 a month I was paying for image invested in a simple index fund over the past 25 years, $265,000 today. Instead, I got 5 years of owning a depreciating asset and a kind of a bruised ego when I had to trade it in for something I could actually afford. And that's just one mistake. The real question is, why do we make these decisions? Why do smart people vacation on credit, chase penny stocks, or buy things to impress their neighbors who aren't even paying attention and really don't care? So let me walk you through the 7 decisions I wish I could undo, and more importantly, what you should do instead. But before we get into it, this is Brian. I've been a financial advisor for over 25 years, and I've learned a lot over my career, and I want to share some of the things I learned with you today. So let me walk you through the 7 mistakes I would send a text message to my younger self about. Mistake number 1, vacationing on credit. I took an amazing trip to the Caribbean when I was 27. 5-star resort, overwater bungalow, the whole Instagram fantasy before Instagram even existed. I charged about $6,500 to a credit card with a kind of a vague plan of paying it off soon. That trip took me 18 months to pay off at a 28.9% rate of interest. I ended up paying about $9,000 total for that trip. But here's the part that kind of sticks with me, the opportunity cost. I estimated I paid approximately $10,000 in credit card interest over the years just on vacations. Money straight to credit card companies, but that's not the real cost. If I instead saved up for those trips and invested the $10,000 in interest payments at a 10% annual return, that money would be worth over $108,000 today. So let me ask you this. Have you ever justified a purchase by telling yourself, I deserve this? Let me know in the comments because that was my go-to excuse. Instead of financing experiences, here's what I should have done. Create a vacation fund. Set aside money specifically for travel. If the money isn't there, the trip doesn't happen. Because the best vacation is the one you don't spend the next year paying for. But one disclaimer, this was an amazing trip I'll never forget. I sang on stage with Banky Banks, who's the Bob Marley of the island. I played a short set at a beach bar called the Sunshine Shack. I made some amazing memories. I have no regrets that I overpaid for that trip, but that wasn't the only trip I vacationed on credit. The sooner you can set up a vacation account for all the places you want to go, the better off you're going to be. Don't vacation on credit. You're not going to really be able to enjoy the trip anyway to its fullest potential because you'll have this emotional baggage in your head that you're doing this on credit. Mistake number 2 is not buying real estate rental properties. In 2002, I had the opportunity to buy a duplex for 180,000. One side would cover the entire mortgage and I'd live on the other side essentially for free. But I talked myself out of it. I said to myself, it's just too much responsibility. What if something breaks? I'm not super handy. I don't really want to be a landlord. That property sold last year for 650,000. And in the 22 years in between, it generated probably another 200,000 in rental income. But let's just focus on what happened to that 20,000 I didn't invest in real estate. If I had simply put it in an index fund at age 25 and earned 10% return, 20,000 would be worth 220,000 today. Instead, I probably spent it on a vacation. Now, I know real estate isn't for everyone, but here's what I learned. You don't need to be handy. You need to be smart enough to hire people who are. The rental property you don't buy today could be the retirement security you don't have tomorrow. Now, I'm about to share the most dangerous investment mistake I made, one that nearly wiped out my entire tiny little portfolio that I had at the time. Mistake number 3 is buying stocks on margin. This is where things really got ugly, and I'm just glad I learned it early in my investing career. In 1999, I thought I was clever just like everyone else, and I was convinced I could leverage my way to wealth faster by borrowing money from my brokerage account to buy more stocks. When you buy on margin, you're essentially taking out a loan to amplify your returns. Let's say you have $100,000 invested. You can borrow an additional 65% or 65,000 to buy more stocks. You need to maintain that 35% equity. But what happens when stocks go down is you get what's called a margin call. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. When the tech bubble burst and stocks collapsed in March of 2000, here's the nightmare with margin. When your account drops below that certain level, they issue what's called a margin call. You either have to deposit more cash, which I didn't have, or you have to liquidate positions at the worst possible time. I had about a $20,000 portfolio in 1999 that I started to leverage with margin. And I grew that portfolio to almost 140,000. Every time I get more margin buying power, because when the market is going up, that means you could borrow even more money. I would do it and I would keep margining up. From March of 2000 to the end of that year, after about 12 margin calls, my portfolio was worth about $8,000. If I would have just invested that 20,000 in a diversified ETF, earning 10% annual returns, that money would be worth $220,000 today. This was a tough one, but I'm just glad I learned it early. There's a lot of people in 1999 and 2000 that lost millions on margin. So don't buy tech stocks on margin. Don't buy any stocks on margin. It's the fastest way to lose a lot of wealth when the markets go the other way. So this leads us to wealth decision principle number 1. Leverage magnifies everything, including your mistakes. It magnifies your gains and it magnifies your losses. When you borrow money to invest, you're not just increasing your portfolio returns, you're increasing your risk, your stress, and your chance of loss. Warren Buffett said it perfectly. You only find out who's swimming naked when the tide goes out. Don't be the naked swimmer. Mistake number 4 was chasing hot stocks. The dot-com stocks in 1999 I already talked about, but genomic stocks in 2001, cannabis stocks in 2018, I've chased them all. The pattern is always the same, too. You'll hear about some stock that's going to the moon, or cannabis is going to change the world, or genomic stocks are going to change everything, and your coworker is bragging about his 300% return. You feel like you're missing out. FOMO is real, but it's also expensive. What I would say to my younger self is practice JOMO, joy of missing out. You'll be a lot wealthier if you avoid investing in hot stocks and letting FOMO take over your investment decision. I bought a genomic stock in 2001, and 6 months later, it was worth 70% less. Here's the truth that nobody tells you about hot stocks. By the time you hear about them, you're already kind of late to the party. Real money was already made by the people who got in early and are now selling it to you. I estimate that I probably lost about 40,000 over the years chasing hot stock tips, and that number is probably low. Sometimes I'd buy high and sell low out of panic. Sometimes the company would just implode. Sometimes I'd hold on, hoping it would come back while it kept falling. $40,000 gone. If I had invested that 40,000 in boring index funds at age 28 and earned a 10% return over the last 22 years, that money would be worth about $320,000 today. Coming up, I'm going to reveal the purchase that brought me the least amount of actual happiness, and it might surprise you. So, what is the alternative to buying hot stocks? Boring investing wins, index funds, dollar cost averaging, consistency over decades. I know it's not exciting, but you know what is really exciting? Actually having money when you retire. So, this leads me to wealth decision principle number 2. The best investment strategy is the one you can stick with through the worst market condition and not put you in a position where you make emotional decisions. Chasing returns is a strategy. It's just a really bad one. The market rewards patience, not prediction. When you're constantly jumping from one hot investment to another, you're not investing, you're gambling. Mistake number 5 was buying expensive toys, jet skis, camper, sports car, top of the line golf clubs every 2 or 3 years. Here's a question for you. How many toys do you own that you haven't used in the past year? Drop a comment and let me know because I have a garage full of stuff that brought me joy for maybe 3 months. And that jet ski, it cost me almost as much as the value of it when someone asked to use it on the lake, tipped it over, and then flipped it back over wrong, flooded my engine, and put it in the shop for the rest of the summer. I never owned a boat, but most of my friends say the same thing. They used it maybe 8 times over 2 summers. Then it just sat there, depreciating, needing maintenance, and costing money. Most people spent about $35,000 on a boat back then, but it's probably closer to $70,000 today you'd pay for that same boat. If they invested that money instead, it'd be worth about $500,000 today. That's 5 years of retirement expenses. They traded for 2 summers of occasionally going on their boat. The toys you buy today are stealing from the freedom you could have tomorrow. Now, I'm all about enjoying life, and sometimes toys can bring a lot of joy. But I think a better option if you want a boat is join a boat club. You can use it when you want to use it and not have to worry about the additional costs. Mistake number 6, the house too big for my budget mistake. Now, we already talked about the BMW, but the even bigger mistake was buying a house too big for my budget. Because I was a new advisor and I had complete control over my success and income, I always thought I would grow into it because I could increase my income simply by working harder. I bought as much home as the mortgage guy would approve, like most of us do. I was house poor for 5 years because my mortgage payment was over 40% of my income. That extra $500 I was paying for a mortgage cost me about $36,000 over 5 years that could have been invested. That money would be worth about $300,000 today at age 52. And now we're going on to the final mistake. Mistake number 7, not maxing out my 401k early in my life. This is the mistake that probably cost me the most money, but it's the easiest one to fix. For the first 7 years of my career, I contributed just enough to my 401k to get a company match, about 6%. I thought I was being smart. I needed that money now, I told myself, for my car payment and all the trips I wanted to go. But here's the brutal math. If I had maxed out my 401k from age 25 to 32, contributing the maximum allowed each year, that money would be worth approximately $425,000 today. Instead, I contributed the minimum, and that money is worth about $140,000. Now, of course, I made up for it in my late 30s by maxing everything I possibly could to catch up, maxing out a Roth IRA and contributing to a taxable account. But I left almost $300,000 on the table because I didn't want to reduce my lifestyle in my 20s. In just a few minutes, I'm going to give you the exact action plan to make sure you don't repeat these mistakes. But first, the principle that ties all of this together. Wealth decision principle number 3. Your future self is watching every decision your current self makes, and they're taking notes. Every dollar you spend today is a dollar your future self won't have. Every investment you delay is compound interest you'll never recover. Your 25-year-old self and your 50-year-old self are in a negotiation, and most people let the 25-year-old win every single time. But here's what I wish I understood at age 25. Building wealth isn't about making $500,000 a year. It's about making wise decisions with whatever you earn year after year without exception. My dad often said, if you're going to be successful, you better have something to show for your success, not just fancy things or a nice house or a super nice car that impresses nobody except yourself. The car I bought wasn't a car. It was 3 years of financial freedom I gave away. The vacation charged wasn't a vacation. It was compound interest working against me instead of for me. The 401k contributions I skipped weren't just missed contributions. They were decades of growth that I can never get back. Now, I'm all about living for today, but not at the expense of my future. I wrote an entire book about balancing saving for the future and living a richer life today. It's called Momentous Decisions: 7 Steps to Better Health, More Wealth, and a Richer Life. Now, I have regrets that I wasn't smarter with my money in my 20s. Now, I made up for those mistakes, and you can too. The toughest thing about putting this episode together is I estimated that all these 7 mistakes combined cost me about 1.7 million over my life from age 25 to age 52. That's a pretty tough one to swallow. Some of those I don't have regrets over. They were experiences that gave richness to my life, but at the expense of my future wealth. Here's my question for you, and I have this as a pinned comment. Which of these 7 mistakes have you made or are you currently making? Because awareness is the first step to change. So let's get practical with this episode. Here's your action plan: 5 things you can do in the next 48 hours. Number one, calculate your true car cost. Take your car payment, multiply it by 12, then multiply that by 25. That's what that car is really costing you in the future. If the number makes you uncomfortable, it's good. Let it motivate you to make a different decision when your lease is up. Also, if your car payment each month is more than you're saving for retirement, something has to change. Throw the ego aside and the keeping up with the Joneses mentality and buy a car you can afford. You shouldn't be spending more than 8% of your income on a car payment. Action step number 2, create a vacation savings account. Open a separate high yield savings account today. Automate a transfer of even $200 to $400 a month. That's $2,400 to $4,800 a year towards guilt free travel that won't haunt you with interest charges. Step number 3, increase your 401k contributions by 1%, not 10%, not the maximum, unless you can. Just 1% more than you're contributing right now. You won't even miss it. Then in 6 months, increase it another 1%. Keep going until you hit your maximum. This is how you build wealth, one small, consistent decision at a time. Action step number 4, write a letter to your future self. I'm serious about this. Open your notes app right now and write a letter to your future self 10 years from now. What do you want that person to thank you for? What financial freedom do you want them to have? Then read it every time you're about to make an impulse purchase or a bad investment decision. Action step number 5, delete stock trading apps. If you're chasing hot stocks or day trading, delete those apps. Trading stocks is the casino of Wall Street. Open up a brokerage account with Vanguard or Fidelity or Schwab and set up automatic investments into low-cost index funds. Make investing boring. Once you have a base of boring investments, put 5% in Bitcoin. Put 5% in private equity investments or gold. Buy a stock with money you can afford to lose. Make sure you have a base of quality investments before you ever risk any of your money. Always remember Warren Buffett's 2 rules. Number 1, don't lose money. Number 2, don't forget rule number 1. Now, look, I can't get my 20s back. I can't undo the BMW or recover the money I lost on margin in 2000 or buy that duplex in 2002. But you can learn from my mistakes without paying the tuition. The beautiful thing about financial decisions is that it's never too late to start making better ones now. Whether you're 25 or 35 or 55, you can learn from these mistakes. And here's what I know after 25 years as a financial advisor. The people who build real wealth aren't smarter than you. They're not making more money. They just made better decisions more consistently over a longer period of time. Your future self is counting on you, so don't let them down. If this video helped you, do me a favor, subscribe to my channel and share this with a person who needs to hear it. Maybe it's your younger sibling. Maybe it's a friend who just bought a car they can't afford. They're probably not going to want to hear that their fancy car is costing them a ton of future wealth. But maybe it's your own kid. Drop a comment telling me which mistake hit home the hardest. I read every single one, and one of them just might inspire a future episode. Next week, I'm revealing the 5 ratios you need to know to keep you from feeling broke, including one that the financial industry doesn't want you to know. You're not going to want to miss it. So until then, keep making better wealth decisions. This is Brian, the Wealth Decisions Guy, and I hope to see you next week.